Alright everybody, welcome back to another video. Today is Tuesday and we're just going to read some nice stories today. I found two nice stories over here. This week's Parsha talks about the Bris Milah, and there's some stories over here about the Bris and names and things like that. So let's just start reading. So it says over here that this story is about Rav Uri of Strelisk, who was also a very, very big Tzaddik in the Hasidic world back then. They called him the Seraphs of Strelisk. So it says over here that he was born in the year Tov Kuf Yud Zayin in a small village next to the city of Yanov, which is next to Lvov, I guess, in Ukraine. And he was born, his father's name was Rabbi Pinchas, and he was born there. And before he was born, his father, Rabbi Pinchas, got a bracha from the Maggid of Mezrich, who said to him, in the future you are going to give birth to a son that will light up the whole entire world with Judaism, with Jewishness. And his soul will be from one of the souls that ran away from Adam Arishon before he sinned with the Eitz Hadas. Right? There's a known thing in the Hasidic world, in the Hasidic story world, in the Hasidic thing, that there are certain neshamas that ran away from the neshama of Adam Rishon. That we say that Adam Rishon had all the neshamas in the world in his neshama, and there were some neshamas that ran away before he ate from the Eitz Hadas, which was considered a sin. And yeah, so they're very, very pure souls. So his neshama is one of those souls. So that's what he said. This was before his wife was even pregnant with Mistam, that he told him this bracha, that this is what the Maggid of Mezrich told him. So fine, he was born, and one time this Tzaddik, the Seraph of Strelisk, told a story about the day that he had his bris. He said on that day, since he lived in a very, very small village, right, on that day there wasn't even a minyan of Jews in the village, right? And my father was crying very much about this, because he wanted to have a minyan at the bris at least, right? Right, fine, right? But from heaven they helped him. Have a minyan. From heaven they helped him to be Menachem the mitzvahs of Milah with 10 Jews, right? They helped him have a minyan, right? So what happened? And now he says that while he was still crying and being very, very sad that there wasn't any more Jews around him, right? All of a sudden he saw this wagon coming down the road and coming, and getting close to them. And then the wagon stopped, and inside the wagon there were 10 Jews. And he was so happy, and they said that they were sent especially to this kfar so that they should take part in his bris milah, right? And they said to them, they said to the father of the son, to the father of Rav Uri of Strelisk, they said to him that we also have among us a Rav, and also somebody who knows how to sing. And now Rav Uri of Strelisk, who's saying over the story to his Hasidim, is saying, do you guys know who these people were at the bris milah? Right? He said that the Tzaddik was Avram Avinu, the Rav was Moshe Rabbeinu, and the person who knew how to sing and play instruments was David HaMelech. So that's who was at his bris. And his wagon was sent from Shemayim with these people on it to take part in the bris and to make the minyan for the bris. And that is a pretty wild story. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty out there, man. All right, let's tell one more story about a bris today. Hopefully also talk a little clearer. I'm sorry. There's a guy, Harav HaKadosh, Rav Chaim Meir Yechiel, also a Seraph, also a very holy person, Moglinza. Right? He was the rabbi, he was the Rav in the city of Moglinza, right? And he was the Rav of the city. And they one time brought in front of him a get, a divorce document. They brought it in front of him, right? So because they had a certain shiloh about it, right? So when this guy wanted to get divorced, they realized, or whatever, he told the people, I guess the other people in the basin, whatever it was, that he had a second name when he was a kid, right? But it was already forgotten, right, from him, and they didn't know if they should write in the get the name that he's called now, or should they also write the name that he was also called when he was a kid, right? Because it's a halacha that when you write a get, it has to be the exact name. I think they even include Shem Kinoi, also in a ksuba they do that, like a nickname or something that people know you by. They want to make sure that the get is as clear as possible, that it's talking about you, chas v'shalom, not you, but whatever the person that's getting divorced, chas v'shalom. And so they needed to know for these things. So the Seraph of Moglinza, this rabbi, said the ikr name of a person is a name that he's called his whole life, like now, for a long time, and not a name that he was called when he was a Yelad Katan, right? Especially when the name is forgotten, right? And they don't even know about this, and they don't even call him that name. And he said, and as a raya, I will tell you a story about myself regarding certain names. So he says that when I was born, right, and when they took me to the bris, when they also at my bris milah, right, my grandfather, who was the Maggid of Kuznets, also a very holy big tzaddik, right, he said the Shemus Shili. Right, he said, Va'az Amar, he said, Vayikari Shemoi B'Yisrael Yirmiyahu, and we should call his name in Israel Yirmiyahu, right? So his grandfather named him Yirmiyahu. But when my father heard this name, and his father was Aviezri Zelig Av Beistim Kodesh Grenitz, okay? When he heard this name, he came to the Tzaddik of Kuznets, to the Maggid of Kuznets, his father-in-law, and he asked him, my father-in-law, what's the parish of the name Yirmiyahu, right? Because Rav Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev told me to call my son Meir, because my son will, light up the whole world. I guess this rabbi was also a big tzaddik, the Seraph of Moglinza, right? And I guess his father, who was this Av Beis Din Kodesh of Grenitz, had gone to Rav Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev to ask him a question, what to name his son, and he said to call Meir because he's going to light up the world, right? So he told the Maggid of Kuznets this, and he said again, that now we are actually going to call his name Meir, right? So now he's saying this story, this tzaddik from the beginning of the story, he's talking about when he was a kid. Now he's saying, so he said that even though my grandfather, the Maggid, called me a second time as my name Meir, but even still, for a few years afterwards, he used to call me by the name of Yirmiyahu, because he said that I was a Gilgul of Yirmiyahu Hanavi. So that's why he called me that name. But afterwards, slowly, this name started to become forgotten, right? And nobody called me this name anymore, Yirmiyahu, but they only called me Chaim Meir Yechiel. Where did he get that name from? He just said his name was Meir. Where did he get the name Chaim Meir Yechiel? guess they left that part out of the story. But nobody knows me as Yirmiyahu anymore, and that's not my name. My name is Chayar Meir Yechiel. So the same thing is that we don't worry about the name that somebody was called when he was a kid, only the name that he's known as now. B'kal b'chomer for sure, and if the name was was forgotten. So that's what he was saying, and that's the raya that he bought. So that they told it. So he was telling the people who wrote the get not to include the name that he had when he was a kid, because that name doesn't count anymore because it was already forgotten. Now just one more story over here. Let's do one more story. What are we up to? 10 minutes video? Let's do one more story. This is a very, very cute story from the Chozeh of Lublin. This is also has to do with children, so it's also in the same regard. Said that one time a very simple villagers, a very simple married couple from a small village came to the Chozeh of Lublin. They were not able to have children, right? And they cried so much in front of him that they wanted to be able to have children, right? So all of a sudden the Chozeh asked from them, you have to bring me 52 coins that are gold, which is a very serious amount of money for a couple from a small village. Very simple people. They probably milk cows or whatever. He said, you have to give me these 52 coins, and then I'll be able to give you and promise you a son, right? So they started bargaining with him, right? They were like, no, we don't have that money. We will give you 20, whatever. All these things, back and forth. They were crying, whatever. But the Chozeh said, if you don't give me all this money, I can't promise you that you're going to have a son. So the man went out of the room, and he counted out an amount of 30 reinish, which are coins shel greatzer. I don't think this is the right amount though, but he went back into the Chozeh with a full bag of these prutais, and he poured all of them on the Chozeh's table. He said, Rebbe, I'm bringing you all the money that I have. And the Rav HaKadosh says, Im chaser af pruta achas men schum shel nun beis golden, even if it's missing one pruta from this schum of 52 golden coins, I cannot promise you these things. So the woman turned to her husband and said, don't you see the Rebbe is being stubborn about this? Right? Why don't we go back to our house? And we're just gonna go speak to Hashem about this. We're gonna go talk to Hashem. He could help us without the Rebbe. And when the Rebbe heard these words, his eyes lit up. He says, this is exactly what I wanted to hear. And now you already have your Yeshua. Right? And the inyan is that when you put all your emunah and bitachon in the Rebbe, right, and you don't understand, and you don't have das to understand that the koich of the Tzaddik only comes from the koich of Hashem, right, and he's only just a shliach, right, so then there's no possibility of a Yeshua happening for you, right? So he was able, so the Tzaddik here, he brought them to a matzav of almost yish, of almost giving up, and they didn't give up, that the only thing that they could do is go look at Hashem. That's the only thing to do in this world, is always to rely on Hashem. Ezer Hashem, everyone should be blessed. Have a good day.